All right, well, here we are. So we will begin now. And we'll begin with what has been our traditional beginning for quite some time, which is to go through the process of purification. And when you hear that, it's not like a purification of sin or evil or those kinds of things that we might think about based on our Western conditioning. But it's more of a purification of the mind of anything that might get in the way of you meditating or feeling peaceful. And so the kinds of things that we might look for, we come into a place like this and we sit down, and everybody's probably had a busy day in one way or another and have had different things that were stressful and fun and exciting, and this range of human experiences. And sometimes we bring these things in when we're going to start meditating, and we realize, wow, there's a lot on my mind, there's a lot going on. So sometimes it's helpful to be aware of that and then to let it go. We can kind of set it down, or we sort of hang it like our coats, We come in and there's the coat hooks, and we can hang our coats, and it's like, that's our coat. We're going to put that on again later, and we'll wear that, and we'll deal with our coat. But for now, we have an opportunity to put those things down. So that's kind of the tradition there. So what I'd like to do, I'm going to ring the big bell as we do this short practice. I just invite everybody to close their eyes for a moment and maybe just think about anything that you're carrying that would be helpful to put down temporarily. So whether it is frustration over some project that you're working on, or anger over some situation that has been contentious, or whether it's fear of something that may happen and you're concerned about that, maybe some hostility or some ill will that you're feeling as a result of something that happened. None of these things are judgments against you in any way. These are just recognitions of the stuff that we all experience on pretty much of a daily basis. So let's put those things down, and in place of them, we can cultivate a few wholesome states of consciousness, and this is kind of the second phase of the purification. So we will often focus on what are known as the four Brahma-viharas, which are, the first is compassion. So thinking of our own experiences in life where we have been sad, or have been in pain, or have been in one way or another suffering, and we know how we wished to escape that suffering. And so this is one thing that we have in common with every other living being on the planet, is that all beings wish to escape suffering. And so we generate, or we cultivate this compassion. Karuna is the Pali word for it. So may all beings be free from suffering and from the causes of suffering. And may all beings, the second one is metta, which is loving kindness. May all beings be surrounded by love and kindness. And that includes the beings in this room. That includes yourself. That includes the fly that's crawling across the floor. So all beings surrounded by love and kindness. And may all beings be joyful and happy. And may all beings be equanimous, which is a peacefulness and a freedom that is generated in the absence of wanting. So this is a real freedom and a real peacefulness. So we just cultivate these four wholesome states, and it's a very beautiful thing. It's very freeing. And we might even add to that, may the work we do here tonight in meditation and in our conversation later, may that all lead to helping beings achieve those wonderful goals. So with that, I'll sound the bell. Let there be peace. Let there be peace. Namaskar. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome, and thank you for being here. So what we normally start out with, and I'll just let you know, so since you're new tonight, is we start off with a guided meditation practice. So have you done much in the way of meditation in the past, or?
Not much.
Not much? Okay. Well, this will probably be ideal for you because I'll guide through the whole thing. So there's nothing you need to know how to do in advance. And we just do it together as a group. And so usually everybody takes a couple of minutes to get comfortable, however they would like to be during the meditation. So as you can see, some people are preparing to lay on the floor. Some people like to sit. All sorts of different ways to do it. So it's really whatever's comfortable for you. So just knowing your own body, if you feel like sitting in the chair will be okay for a period of time, that's great. We do have extra cushions and mats and blankets and things in that closet, so you're welcome to use any of that stuff. And then also, if you start off sitting and then after a few minutes you get uncomfortable, you can move. It's okay to adjust your posture or change positions if you need to. You don't have to sit like a statue. So just whatever feels good to you,
Okay.
Whatever feels right. There's no wrong way to do it. And there's no such thing as a bad meditation either. And that's a fact. Yeah. Lots of different stuff. You might have to dig a little bit, but bolsters and yoga blocks and blankets. That's been one nice thing since the yoga folks have been coming here. They've been bringing a lot of different supplies that we normally haven't had, so we have access to that too. So that's great. All right, so just take a couple minutes to get comfortable. Find a way to be relaxed in your own body. See if you can find a way to release any conflict in your body. So you might check with the way you're sitting or laying and just see, do I have any tension on one particular muscle or one particular side of my body, or is there any way I can balance that out a little bit? Anything obvious I can let go of with regard to tension? And then once you've done that, you can let your eyes close. Some folks are uncomfortable with their eyes closed in a group, and if that's the case, you can leave them open. But we close our eyes in our practice as a way of just eliminating visual distractions. With your eyes closed, it's a little less to look at, a little less to think about. And then you can check in with your breath and just allow your breath to be free and natural. Let it be full, but don't manipulate it in any way. We'll just let the breath do what it wants to do. If you're able to breathe through your nose, that is helpful as we get further into the practice. But of course, with allergies and colds and things like that, if you're not comfortable breathing through your nose, then breathe through your mouth by all means. So just making peace with the body, letting go of conflict in the body, and noticing how just that simple effort leads to peacefulness in the mind, a calm in the mind. So from here, with everybody ready, I'm going to sound the meditation bell. Invite you to follow the sound of the bell, and then when it goes into silence, I'll begin to guide us through the practice. Follow the sound of the bell as it fades into silence. let the silence be an invitation to turn your senses inward. This is our opportunity to let go of one of the strong habits of the mind, which is to be projected outward through the senses, always listening to what's around us, always wondering, always thinking. Instead, you can just turn your senses inward and become aware of what it feels like to be occupying your own body right now. Whether you're sitting or laying, it's just an awareness. This is the feeling of occupying my body at this moment. This sense of presence, sense of being, and awareness. And with that sense of presence established, let's all bring our awareness up to the top part of the head, to the area of the scalp. And for a few moments, just focus your awareness on the scalp, just the scalp exclusively. Focus awareness here and open up the awareness to any physical sensations that are present in your scalp. So there's just a few moments of opening up. What are the sensations in the scalp at this moment in time? And as you observe, you might notice sensations of temperature. Sometimes there's a sensation of warmth or coolness. And that sensation of warmth or coolness, that can even be generated internally by the body, or it can be experienced externally through the atmosphere. So there's this awareness possibly of temperature sensation. Sometimes there's air movement in the room. You might feel that on your skin or through your hair. Sometimes there are sensations on the surface of the skin, like a tingle or a tickle or an itch. So we're just noticing whatever's there. Whatever sensations are arising, we notice them, we observe them. Sometimes they pass away, we observe this passing away. And within the area of the scalp, if you notice any tension, you can release that tension. Let it leave the body. Just give it permission to do that. You may go. You may leave the body. And many people are surprised to find that, yes, there is in fact tension in the scalp. So we just let it go. And then we continue to observe the sensations, still in the scalp, just observing, just observing. And then from the scalp, we can move the awareness downward. Feel it moving downward into the forehead, moving downward into the temples. You can feel it moving from the forehead downward through the eyebrows and into the eyes. So now you've got awareness in these four parts of the body: forehead, temples, eyebrows, eyes. Open up to the physical sensations here. Anything you feel, just be aware. And sometimes as we experience sensations, there's a tendency to want to name them or identify them subvocally or in the mind. We kind of want to talk to ourselves about them. But see if you can just have the experience of the sensation without the words added on. Just the bare experience, just the raw experience of sensation. And again, it's just temperature, air movement, sensations on the surface of the skin. Pretty common stuff. Noticing these sensations, Noticing tension anywhere in these parts and letting the tension go. Let the forehead soften. Let the eyebrows relax. If there's tension in the temples, let that go. If there's any tightness in the eyes or squinting, just release. Let it leave the body. Just allow it to go. And then from the temples, we'll move the awareness downward into the ears. And really see if you can feel that movement of awareness. There is a knowable sensation as that awareness moves from the temples to the ears. And with awareness focused in the ears, we become aware of the different sensations there. From the ears, we can move the awareness forward through the cheekbones, through the face. And then from the eyes, we can let the awareness begin to move downward through the nose. Let it pass down through the nose and the lips and the mouth and chin. Observe all of these sensations without words, without ideas. Let the tension go. Oftentimes the jaws are tight, the teeth are clenched. Oftentimes the lips are pursed. We just let it go. This is our response to tension in the body. We notice it, and we just let it go. Unconditionally release. Continue to observe the sensations throughout the face. And as we observe these sensations, there's nothing you need to feel or shouldn't feel. This is just all about your experience in this moment. Whatever the reality is for you. And that's enough. Just observe that. And now from the chin, we'll let the awareness move downward. Feel it moving down through the throat, down into the neck. Feel the awareness moving through the sides of the neck and into the back of the neck. Again, you're just observing the naturally occurring physical sensations. It is said to be a choiceless observation. Because when you're motionless in this way, you cannot create sensations. You can only observe them as they arise. Let the tension in the neck leave the body if you find any. And then we'll let the awareness move downward again into the shoulders, all the way through the shoulders and outward. Observing the sensations, heat, cool, air movement, sensations on the surface of the skin. Sometimes there's a feeling of just an energy or a tingling on the surface of the skin. Sometimes you'll notice a feeling of contact between your skin and your clothing. Just a very simple sensation to be aware of. And sometimes there's a feeling of contact between your shoulders and the chair, or the floor, or the cushion, depending on your position. Let any tension go, allow the shoulders to drop. And then from the shoulders, we'll move the awareness downward into the upper arms. We'll spend a few moments observing the different parts of the upper arms. First, the biceps, all the way from the tops down to the elbow joints. And as I'm naming these parts, just bring your awareness to the part and be aware of the sensations and release the tension if you notice it. And now we move to the inside part of the upper arm, same process. We move to the back part of the upper arm, the tricep. And then we'll move once again to the outside part of the upper arm, from top to bottom. Sensations, releasing tension. Moving the awareness now through the elbow joints. Feel the movement of awareness as it passes through the forearms. And again, each part, you're just aware of sensations. Whatever is there for you, releasing any tension. Sometimes tension can be very subtle, and so it can be helpful to just release tension no matter what. Just make that part of the practice. Each part, release tension. Each part, release tension, whether you notice it being there or not. And allow the awareness to flow down through the forearms into the wrists. Let it pass through the wrists into the hands. And in the hands, you'll feel the heels of the hands, the palms, move to the tops of the hands. And then move the awareness through the thumbs and the fingers. Just observing sensation and letting the tension go. Feeling as the body becomes more and more calm and peaceful. And as the body relaxes, the mind becomes quiet. Move your awareness down to the very tips of your fingers, to the fingernails. Spend a couple of moments observing them. Are there any sensations there? Any sensations in the fingernails? Sometimes you'll discover just a very subtle vibration or pulsation or an energy. Now from the fingernails, we will move up to the top of the chest. So maintain the continuity of your awareness and move to the top of the chest. Be aware of the sensations across the collarbones, and then allow the awareness to flow downward through the chest, all the way down to the base of the sternum, and then outward through the rib cage. Sensations, tension is met with release. And then move the awareness to your underarms and slowly allow it to move down the sides of the body, all the way down to the waist, observing the sensations, letting the tension go. You can let that releasing of tension become a new, wholesome, skillful habit. Discovering tension in the body, I let it go. Discovering tension in the body, I let it go. Now from the waist, you can bring the awareness forward into the belly. Observe sensations here as the belly rises and falls with the breath. Sometimes there's a feeling of expansion or contraction. Just observe the sensations of the belly. Let any tension go. We often hold tightness in the belly. Just let it relax. Let the tension go. And then from the belly, we'll make a move again around to the top of the back this time. Bring the awareness up to the base of the neck and back. Allow it to move downward through the upper third of the back, through the shoulder blades. Observe any sensation. Notice tension and let it go. Let the awareness flow through the middle third of the back now. Again, noticing the sensations, just being aware of them one by one. As awareness meets them, let the tension go. And then move the awareness downward into the lower third of the back, through the muscles. Observe the sensations and let the tension go. Now, for many of us in the back, we'll encounter sensations that are perhaps unpleasant or difficult or maybe painful from fatigue or from injury. And a lot of times around these strong sensations, these difficult sensations, there is a lot of tension. And we hold that tension in the body around the discomfort. But right now, you have created a tremendous amount of calm and peacefulness and stability in your own body. So with this in mind, just open up your awareness to be even more expansive and allow space for these difficult sensations to be in your body as they are, but without reacting to them with negativity or with disliking. See if you can just let them be as they are. It doesn't mean you have to pretend to like them, but it's just noticing this is the reality of this moment, the feeling in my body. I can allow it to be as it is. I can allow space around it. I can allow tension to leave. I can be at peace with my body. And now from the lower back, we can continue to move the awareness down into the sit bones. Feel it moving through the hips and throughout the pelvis. All sensations, letting go of tension. And then moving down into the thighs, letting awareness move from the tops of the thighs all the way down to the knee joints. And we'll spend a little time focusing on just the top surface of the thighs. The sensations here, the tension here. And then moving the awareness to the outside surface of the thighs. Again, just observing and releasing. And then to the underside of the thighs. These are the sensations in this moment. Tension is observed and released. And then moving the awareness to the inside part of the thighs. From the top all the way down to the knee joint. Observing and letting go. And then we'll begin to move the awareness down through the knee joints. Again, a part of the body where there is often discomfort. And you can use that same technique of expansive awareness to alleviate some of the discomfort by accepting it as it is. Moving down through the knees into the calves and the shins. We're still staying with that process of just observing sensations objectively, letting the tension go, allowing awareness to flow through the ankles, letting it begin to move down into the feet, through the heels, Feel it moving through the soles. Feel it moving through the balls of the feet. And then round through the tops of the feet, into the toes, and then finally into the toenails. And once again, with awareness here in the toenails, see if you can detect any sensations at all. Just opening the awareness. And now from the tips of the toes, we'll move our awareness one more time up to the top of the head, up to the area of the scalp. But this time, at your own pace, you can begin to move your awareness back down through your body. So you can move more quickly if you'd like, or continue to move slowly. But do move through each part of the body roughly in the same order that we did it together, just so nothing is left out. Take a brief moment to notice sensation. Let tension go. Take note of the places in the body where tension has returned. Since our first pass through, there are places where you release the tension and now you'll find that it has returned. If you discover these places of reoccurring tension, you can release it again. But be aware that these may be parts of the body where you habitually hold tension. And we all have these places, and they come about as a result of difficult emotions and experiences that we have throughout the day. Things happen that make us mad, and we tense up. Things happen that are frightening, and we tense up. Things happen that make us excited, and we tense up. And then after the mind has moved on to different subjects, different topics, the tension in the body remains. And as long as this tension is here, it continues to echo the emotions, the difficult emotions that caused it in the first place. So you have this sort of background hum of negativity or worry or tension, stress, anxiety, with awareness moving through the body to all of these places where tension persists. We begin to free ourselves from that habit energy. So move awareness through the body, releasing that tension. And once you've had a chance to move through the body, we'll bring the awareness up to the base of the nose. There's a little patch of skin here beneath the nostrils and above the upper lip. Focus your awareness on this little spot for just a moment. And then from here, we'll expand the awareness to include the rings of the nostrils. And then from the rings of the nostrils, we'll expand the awareness to include the nasal passages. So now if you can picture this triangular area of the nose, focus all of your awareness here and become aware of the movement of the breath. So when you're breathing in, just be aware that you're breathing in. And when you're breathing out, just be aware that you're breathing out. Breathing in, I know that I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I know that I'm breathing out. And try to stay with the full duration of each breath. Staying with the in-breath in its entirety as it comes in. Stay with it as it slows and pauses, becomes the out-breath. Stay with the out-breath, Notice as it slows and pauses and becomes the next in-breath. Just remain with the breath. And now as you observe the full duration of the breath, open up your awareness to include the touch of the breath. The touch of the breath, anywhere in this triangular area of the nose. And experiencing the touch of the breath as the breath moves in and as the breath moves out. You might become aware of more subtle sensations. Breathing in, the air is a bit cooler. As opposed to breathing out, the air feels a little bit warmer. Breathing in, the air feels a little bit drier. You breathe out and the air feels a little more moist. So stay with these subtleties of the breath as you breathe in and breathe out. Remain fully aware of the in-breath, fully aware of the out-breath. Stay with this movement of the breath and the touch of the breath and the sensations of the breath. Sometimes as we do this, we will find ourselves distracted away from the breath, sometimes by sounds. There might be sounds in the room or sounds coming from outside, and we find the mind moves to those sounds, or sometimes reacts with some negativity, thinking, I don't like that sound, I wish it wasn't there. But in the moment you become aware of that distraction, that movement of the mind, just guide it back to the nose, to the respiration, the movement of the breath, and the touch and the sensations. And sometimes you'll find that awareness has been pulled away by strong physical sensations. And you might notice pain or a feeling of fatigue somewhere in the body. Sometimes there is a tickle or an itch and that pulls the attention away. But in that moment of noticing, it's a wonderful moment to just return your awareness to the breath. Each time you do that, you begin to train the mind to remain focused on the breath. And just begin again. Begin again. And sometimes the mind will move away from the breath. You'll find yourself thinking or planning or just imagining something. If you notice this, the moment you notice the distraction, that is the moment of awakening for you to return your awareness back to the breath. And so regardless of the distraction, as soon as we notice, we just return to the breath. There's no anger there, there's no, oh, I'm doing it wrong. There's just recognition. The awareness has moved, I guide it back. The awareness has moved, I guide it back. And then you refocus on the movement of the breath, and the touch and the sensations of the breath, all within this triangular area of the nose. So let's practice this way together for just a few minutes, staying focused, returning after each distraction has been noted. And in just a couple of minutes here, I'll sound the bell to end the meditation practice. just take your time coming out of meditation. Feel free to stand up or stretch. Move around a little bit. One thing I did tonight, if anybody's interested, I started a kettle of hot water in the kitchen. There's a bowl of all kinds of different teas, and there's some raw sugar in there. And so I know sometimes after we do the meditation, everybody's so chilled out that it's kind of hard to stay awake for the talk. So if you're interested, please help yourself as we're kind of transitioning. I turned it on just before we started. You can always turn it on again, Joni, if it's off, and it heats up very quickly. But help yourself. I just thought, why not? A nice way to do it.
I know.
And feel free to use the restroom as we transition here too. The restroom is back by the entry door.
Back where?
Kind of by the entrance door there.
Okay.
Yeah, right there. I put a little temporary restroom sign on it.
Oh.
I'll put once everything's painted, then I'll put a permanent sign on it.
I like your lamps too.
Do ya?
Yeah.
I figured I'd put a bunch of little lamps in here so everybody could kind of, choose their own light
Those
level.
let out nice lights. I've got my grandmother's old one with the globes this big.
Yeah?
It's beautiful, and it lets out such a nice light.
That's great.
Not for reading particularly, but watch a spot of tea.
Yes, I do.
Come on.
Was the water hot?
Yep.
Good. Good
Oh
deal.
yeah, look at it steaming.
Excellent. Did you try any of that freaky sugar in there?
Yeah, I haven't tried it because it's divided, but of course it.
It's got a good flavor. It's demerara sugar, which it's raw sugar. It's got all the it's got the molasses in it. Along, it's got a slightly different flavor. It's neat.
What they sweeten with in Peru.
Yeah,
So like when you first have a Coke or something, it's like, ooh,
yeah,
because it's just a different kind of sugar.
yeah, different kind of sugar. Yeah,
Where do you
it's
get that?
neat looking stuff. You can get it at co-ops and things. I actually found a box of it at Walmart. Yeah, but it's real, raw, organic, and it's sort of like sugar cubes, but it's brown, and they're not.
Symmetrical.
Yeah, they're just sort of broken up pieces of hardened sugar. So, all right. I have a poem for you as we're transitioning. This is one of my favorites. It's called The Altar of This Moment by Dorothy Hunt. And as you hear the beautiful birds singing out there, place everything you can perceive, everything you can see, hear, smell, taste, or touch upon the altar of this moment and give thanks. It is over so soon. This expression, this single moment of your precious life, this one heart pounding itself open with fear or wild joy. This one breath rising in the cold winter air, smoothly and gently, or coughing and sputtering. Bow while you can before this one taste of afternoon tea, warming its way to your belly, or the fragrant orange exploding its sweet juice in your grateful mouth. You have to love the antics of your mind, imagining life should only be sweet The bitter makes the sweet, and life is both. It is whole, like you, before you think yourself to pieces. Place this moment's pain and confusion on the altar too, and give special thanks for such grace that wakes you up from sleeping through your life. Pain is greatly underrated as a pointer to unknowing, yet greatly overrated when taken as identity. In this one moment, your eyes meet mine, and there is a single looking. What is peering from behind our masks? Can it touch itself across the room? Place your palms together. Touch your holy skin. In another moment it will shed itself. What will you be then? What were you before you had two hands? What are you now? You cannot capture that and place it on the altar of this moment. It is the altar, and this moment's infinite expressions and the seeing and its own devotion to itself. You are that. You are that. Beautiful poem by Dorothy Hunt. All right, well tonight we're going to continue our conversation on, we started the talk on what are called the 10 perfections, which are 10 aspects or 10 qualities of our character or of our being. These are parts of us that are intrinsic to our nature as human beings, but over time and due to conditioning and circumstances and all sorts of different experiences in our lives, these 10 perfections start to get covered up by other ideas, by other things. And so what we've been talking about is sort of reinvigorating these 10 perfections, finding them again where they are, cultivating them back into prominence, and being who it is we already are, but really embracing that perfection which is our true nature. So last week we started on part 2, and so there are handouts for those of you who did not get one. I think there's a few of you. Cheryl, thank you so much. Always appreciate that. So that's part 2. And then I have, she's going to pass out the part 2s.
Okay.
But then I'm wondering, there's some who did not get part 1. So let me give you a part 1.
Okay.
And yeah, and then Cheryl will give you the part 2. And then did anybody else not get a part 1? Janine
I
probably?
don't have one, no.
Okay,
Part
Janine,
1.
Janine needs a part 1. Anybody else not have a part 1? So everybody's got a part 1 and a part 2 now?
I don't have it with me, but
Okay.
I got it.
Yeah, doesn't matter if you have it with you, just so long as you can. Okay, so the 10 perfections, and we're on part 2. And so I'll just read through all 10 very briefly here to kind of kick us off. But the 10 perfections, the first is dhamma-vicaya. These are Pali terms, Pali language. And so translated, dhamma-vicaya is the perfection of giving. The second is sila-vicaya, which is the perfection of virtue. The third is nekkhamma-vicaya, which is the perfection of renunciation, which is what we were on last week and we'll finish up tonight. The next one is panya-vicaya, which is the perfection of discerning wisdom. And then viraya-vicaya, which is the perfection of energy. Kanti-vicaya, the perfection of patience. Sakka-vicaya, the perfection of truthfulness. Aditthana-vicaya, the perfection of determination. Metta-vicaya, the perfection of loving kindness. And upekkha-vicaya, the perfection of equanimity. So these are the 10 perfections. Again, think of them as not things that you have to figure out how to go get, how to learn, how to acquire these, but think of these more in terms of this is already you. This is already who you are, these 10 perfections. And so by learning about them, by talking about them, it's sort of like recognizing something that's already there. It's like, oh, that's what that is. That's what that is. And I see how when I think about myself in this way, or I think about my life in that way, how that starts to cover up some of those 10 perfections. So that's kind of the mindset that we have here. So there's no shortcomings. This is just, oh yeah, that got covered with dust. That got covered with dust over these years of just not recognizing it was there. So now that I know, I'll clear the dust off. I'll polish that a little bit, and that'll start to shine. So Nakama Parami is where we were at like last week, and that is the perfection of renunciation. And there's kind of two aspects to this. One is that this was taught as a type of practice for monks and nuns who were in a monastic setting. And so you can imagine there's a certain amount of renunciation that goes along with that. If you become a nun or a monk, you give up most of your worldly possessions. You just have a few items of clothing, maybe a couple of books and your eyeglasses and some beads and a bowl, and not much else. And so there's a certain amount of renunciation of material goods. But there's also, in that monastic setting, a renunciation of a lot of different, potentially worldly thoughts as a way of training ourselves. And when I was in some of these long-term retreats with the monastic setting, we also took those vows of renunciation, and they were a way of helping us to train ourselves to stay focused on Dhamma practice. So that's kind of the monastic or the monks and the nuns, the way that they worked with it. But on a very practical basis, for us normal people who are not monks or nuns, renunciation, you could really look at it as having a mind that is ready to let go of the attachments that cause us to suffer. So it's kind of cultivating this mindset that and it's a little bit like when we're doing the meditation practice and we're cultivating a mindset that when we meet tension, that our response to that tension is to simply let it go. We kind of give it a free path out of the body. We release that tension unconditionally, no conditions, we just let it go. Let that tension leave the body. Let that tension leave the body. So what we know about the suffering that we experience as human beings is that suffering is caused by clinging, by craving, by aversion, these things that we call attachments. And so the perfection of renunciation for us normal folks is having a mind that is really ready to let go. Anytime we notice that I'm starting to get attached to something in a way that's making me suffer. What this does not mean, and sometimes we talk about you have to be ready to let go of your attachments, and you might think to yourself, well, hey, I'm really attached to my spouse or to my partner or to my children. Does that mean I have to, renounce that love or that attachment for them? And no, you don't have to renounce that. These are wholesome emotions, to have love for a partner, to have love for children or for your friends, or to have a desire to do good things for other people. I mean, these are wholesome or skillful intentions. But there are things that cause us to suffer, and usually those are around feelings of greediness, feelings of ill will, or moments of delusion where we're not thinking clearly or we're not facing the truth with a certain wisdom. And wisdom is the next perfection that we'll get into after we talk about this. But so you could just think of this perfection of renunciation as yourself noticing where and when you start to grasp and cling and hold on to different things that cause you to start to feel stressed out, that cause you to start to suffer. And when you notice these things, you are prepared to start to let go of them in a healthy, wholesome way. So not letting go of love for family or friends, but letting go of perhaps sometimes we can intermingle with love. There can become like a neediness, there can become sort of a feeling of, boy, this is not enough. This is not enough. I need more attention, or I need attention in a certain way. I like to, as many of you know, I like to share my personal experiences with you because, that's where the rubber hits the road. It's with real life experiences. And so, a lot of times I share my personal stuff so that you, so that you can kind of relate to it. Well, I've had the experience of dating someone, of seeing someone who I care for very much. And early on in that experience, we would exchange texts, and because that's the way it's done apparently now, is via text. And so, apparently.
In your day.
Well, apparently you don't talk on the phone anymore. I found this out. Because I even made the mistake of saying, "Can I call you?" And I was told, well, why? Why would you? What do you call me? What are you talking about? So so apparently texting is the thing. But anyway, so nice text going back and forth. But so I would see these texts, and one thing about texts that I've realized as a normal person is that you can read them over and over and start to kind of evaluate them and analyze them. Okay, what does this line really mean here, and what are they saying here, and what are they saying here?
Autocorrect.
And so you're starting to think this way. And so there's a part of the mind that is taking this really lovely, just sort of sweet text of, some very kind words, and I'm thinking, if it was said in this way, I think I'd feel better about it. Or, if it said that, I think that would be cool. She should have said that. I'll have to tell her that I shared this. But these are the kinds of things that can sometimes happen. This is just a really simple, it's kind of a silly, sweet thing. But one of the things that I try to do is remind myself, let it be enough. There were some kind, sweet words spoken, transmitted, texted, whatever it is. Let that be enough. Why do we have the tendency to always look at these things and say, it could have been better if, right? And we do that all the time with all sorts of things, in relationships or in different experiences we have, or we might be doing something and you're thinking, this is kind of nice, but it would be even better if this was happening or if that was happening. So there's always sort of this what if mind, or this it could have been better if mind, or as I often call it, the wanting mind. There's just that part of the mind that is habitually wanting something different than it is. So to be aware of that stuff as it comes up, and not to beat yourself up about it, but just to notice, hey, I'm causing myself to suffer when I think that way. Is there another option here? Is it possible for me to not think that way? And then to just begin to move myself in a different direction. So letting it be enough. In what is said, let there just be what is said. In what is seen, let there just be what is seen. In what is heard, let there just be what is heard. And let everything be as it is, and let it be enough. Just as it is, let it be enough. Just experience it and let it be enough. So this is some insight into the perfection of renunciation, this noticing these tendencies and these habits that each and every one of us have, even after decades of meditation, that will lead us to some suffering, some dis-ease. The Pali word we use for that is dukkha. It's a great word, most often translated as suffering, but it's a great word because it actually means a number of things. It can mean stressfulness, it can mean dis-ease, it can mean dissatisfaction, it can mean anguish, it can mean misery, it can mean suffering, it can mean all these different things. So it doesn't have to be, it's not a real pessimistic thing, like, oh yes, there's always this horrible suffering. I mean, sometimes there truly is, but a lot of times it's just agitation, or a little bit of worry, or a little bit of, it could have been better if. So, noticing these tendencies that we all have, and being prepared to let them go, being prepared to release that. Renunciation is also renunciation of our unskillful attitudes about ourselves and the world around us. So sometimes those attitudes come from some pretty harsh self-judgment. I'm not good enough, or I'm not smart enough, or I'm not young enough, or I don't make enough money, or I'm not young enough, or I'm too young, or whatever the case may be. So there's an awareness of sort of this negative self-talk. Is it possible to just accept yourself as you are, just experience yourself as you are? Is it possible to just let that be enough? And when we do that intentionally, the feeling is really peaceful. I mean, you really start to open up into this feels good. This is just a very simple, very subtle transition, but it's incredibly powerful. It feels good just to notice these moments where I beat myself up and see if I can just let that go. And just be here. Is it okay? Is it okay? I'm getting old. Is that okay? Yeah. My hair is turning gray, hair's falling out, knees get stiff. This is part of life. It's okay. It's okay for this to be this way. As it gets dark, if it's too dim, feel free to turn on those lights. It's up to you. So again, some insight into this renunciation. Last week I left off I was on page 2 of the handout under the not your normal renunciation. Sometimes in the West we think of renouncing something, we think of it in terms of sort of a negativity, like there's ill will. You'll hear somebody say, I renounce my citizenship. And along with that means, so I'm very unhappy and I'm against this and I'm against that. So there's ill will sometimes with renunciation in the West, or there is aversion or disliking. But in this type of renunciation, this nikama renunciation, this arises when one practices, essentially you practice meditation, and you practice this vipassana insight meditation, which is what we do. You practice that to the extent that you see how suffering arises in conjunction with certain types of thoughts. So once a meditator sees this firsthand, how their suffering is caused by reacting to things with some degree of greed, hate, and delusion, those are the 3 poisons in the teachings, or the 3 root defilements they're sometimes called, this person is apt to abandon such attachments. So this is another aspect of renunciation. It's like, oh yeah, there's that. I see this greediness in my relationship. I see this greediness in my work. Or I see this hatred or ill will, maybe for other people or for other organizations or groups. Some of these things don't have to be super intense. In fact, most of the time they're not. But when you see these things arising and you notice, oh yeah, when that comes up, when ill will comes up in me, I don't feel so good. When ill will subsides, I feel pretty peaceful and free. So it's like, well, which way do you want to feel then? I think I'll abandon the ill will, you know? I think when I feel greedy, I don't feel like I have enough. When I feel greedy, I feel like I want more, and I feel like other people are holding back what should be rightfully mine. That's what I feel like when I'm greedy. Does that feel good? No, no. It makes me suffer. It makes me feel, stressed out, not good. So, do I want more greed or do I want less? Well, I think I want less. So that's what I mean by when you start to practice this stuff. So this is awareness of this as it's showing up in your life, and then you're actually mindful of it. You see what happens, and it helps you to make the decisions in the future. But that's the key, is all of this revolves around mindfulness. If you're not aware of any of it, then it's just all passing through consciousness, and it's just, it's just all moving through. It's just all moving through, and you're not getting any benefit from it. It's just happening. But with mindfulness, when you are mindful of what's going on, there is this objective awareness of all of this non-judgmental awareness, and this is this part of you that allows you to see this stuff and say, oh yeah, when I'm greedy, yeah, I suffer. And so I think I should let go of greed. And when I feel hatred for someone, or ill will, or anger, all of these are sort of levels of that hatred. Well, and of course that's aversion too, right? When I feel that, I don't feel so good. I feel suffering. I feel yucky inside. I feel dis-ease. So I think I should let go of hate and ill will and aversion. And then delusion. Delusion sometimes is a little murky for people, but delusion is the opposite of mindfulness. When I am not mindful, I tend to just act spontaneously, and sometimes I say and do things that are not very skillful. When I'm not mindful, anyone who's been in a relationship with another human being, whatever type of relationship that was, whether it was work or partnership or parent or you name it, friend, anytime that you've gotten angry and have not been mindful of it, you tend to say or do things that maybe cause more suffering for you and for the other person. So that's kind of what delusion is. Delusion is not being mindful, not being aware. And it can also be thinking that, well, every time I've done this in the past, it's turned out horribly, but I think I'll just go ahead and try it again because maybe this is the magic time. That's another type of delusion that we experience. So, again, from personal experience, looking at it with mindfulness, objective awareness, I see that when delusion is strong in me, that I do and say things and act in a way that is causing suffering in myself and others to some degree. And so I think I should let go of delusion. So this is the type of renunciation we're talking about. It's not a pushing away or a negative or an ill will type renunciation. This is in fact, it's a very loving type of renunciation, very compassionate. We're seeing the suffering caused by these different things in all of its subtle forms, and so we're letting it go. We're giving it up. I release you. I release you. Bhikkhu Bodhi, here's a neat little passage from him. Contemplating the dukkha. Again, dukkha is that word that means oftentimes translated as suffering, but can mean everything from agitation, stress, dis-ease. Dukkha could be that experience of that maybe some of us had during the meditation when some super loud trucks or motorcycles or whatever it was were outside as I was guiding. Sometimes things like that'll come up, and that's dukkha. Just sort of the being annoyed by that, or being irritated by something, or thinking, should have closed that window, and thinking that over and over. These are very subtle forms of dukkha, all the way up to very intense forms of dukkha, which can be, grief, intense grief from loss, or more severe forms. But it's helpful to know that dukkha is this spectrum. So contemplating the dukkha inherent in desire, the wanting mind is what I often refer to that as, is one way to incline the mind to renunciation. So you think about the dukkha that's inherent in the wanting mind. And just thinking about that is a way to incline the mind to renunciation. Another way is to contemplate directly the benefits flowing from renunciation. To move from desire to renunciation is not, as might be imagined, to move from happiness to grief or from abundance to destitution. It is to pass from gross, entangling pleasures to an exalted happiness and peace, from a condition of servitude to one of self-mastery. Desire ultimately breeds fear and sorrow, but renunciation gives fearlessness and joy. It promotes the accomplishment of all three stages of the threefold training. It purifies conduct, aids concentration, and nourishes the seed of wisdom. That's the threefold training. The entire course of practice from start to finish can in fact be seen as an evolving process of renunciation culminating in nibbana. That's the Pali word. Nirvana is the Sanskrit word, which many of you are familiar with, as the ultimate stage of relinquishment. The relinquishment, or the relinquishing of all foundations of existence. So what he's talking about here is that, again, this renunciation, it's not a renunciation that leads you to having nothing and being penniless and just moving around in misery. But this is a renunciation of the ideas that we have that hold us back. It's a renunciation of the stories that we tell ourselves so often that cause us to hurt inside.
Can I add a little bit?
Yes.
Because not all parts of the mind are the same. When we talk about the brain doesn't have, everything's not the same.
Correct.
You've got the reptilian brain or the brain stem. When you're functioning back there, you can't let go of stuff. That's just like your DNA. So the mindfulness to get to the heart part of the brain is actually up in the frontal lobes, which is really more of the heart.
Mm-hmm.
That the heart is the thing that allows us to have the compassion and to think and to renounce things and to not feel greed. And it's kind of a complex, but actually there are parts of the brain that won't let people let go of things. It's fight or flight, or it's that's just part of our DNA of how we existed. But when you get up into, they call them the angel lobes or the frontal lobes, it's when you can open up your heart.
Right. And I think, and I understand what you're saying, and I agree with it in general. What I think then is the thing we have to do is to interrupt that sort of, that base instinct, which is kind of what I'm talking about. That's sort of the delusion part of it, where we go from just sitting to being extraordinarily filled with rage, and then we act out violently. Now people do that, but it is in fact possible to interrupt that kind of chain of reaction, and to get in front of that. That's what mindfulness is. And that's really one of the things that I've noticed over the years of my practice, is that it's not an uptight sort of, I'm analyzing everything I do and think, and I'm so robotic and so unspontaneous. Not at all. It's just sort of an awareness in a very gentle, sort of natural way. Oh yeah, this is what's happening, and here's how I'm starting to react. What should I do? And then, 9 times out of 10, I redirect it towards something skillful. So something will happen, it's like, oh, I start to feel myself getting mad. Let me work with that mindfully and skillfully and move myself in a different direction. So instead of doing a lot of the things that end up making me more angry or getting me into more trouble, the mindfulness part of that is the part of this that is kind of it interrupts that real base part of us that goes to the rage or to the hatred or to the anger. And so I think that's a real important thing to be aware of. So that's good. Thank you for that. This renunciation, nakama, in the simplest terms, means to let go. Just let go. So when something arises in the mind that causes anger, we can simply let it go. We can sacrifice it on the altar of mental purity. To sacrifice something means to make it sacred. When thoughts arise about why we aren't good enough, we let them go. When thoughts arise about why the other person isn't good enough, we let those go. When ideas of what's missing show up in our consciousness, we let them go. We simply let go without overthinking it. And when we truly let go, when we really renounce, we realize we aren't giving up anything but suffering. In that moment, the inherent perfection in all that shows itself. It's so quiet, but if you listen carefully, you'll hear it saying over and over, you are free. You are free. So that's the real fruit of renunciation. Here's a little quote from the Theravada. This was called a fair trade. I'll make a trade, aging for the ageless, burning for the unbound, the highest peace, the unexcelled rest from the yoke. And that is talking about renunciation, being willing to let go. If I'm able to let go of my hang-ups about aging, I transcend it and I become ageless. If I am willing to let go of my burning for wanting money or wanting status or whatever it is the wanting mind tells me I need, if I'm willing to let that go, what I get is the unbound. I get complete freedom, the highest peace, unexcelled rest from the yoke. And then another little sort of related quote from the Dhammapada. If by forsaking a limited ease, one would see an abundance of ease, the enlightened being would forsake the limited ease for the sake of the abundant. So, again, really talking about the same thing with some slightly different language. If I'm willing to let go of the stories I tell myself about what I need to be a whole person, if I'm willing to let go of those stories, what I find is that this whole person is here and is abundant beyond measure. A couple more quotes and then we'll be done with this for tonight. Bliss. This is a little conversation between the historical Buddha Siddhartha Gautama and a monk named Badaya. So the Buddha says, is it true, Badaya, that upon going to a forest, to the foot of a tree, or to an empty dwelling, you repeatedly exclaim, what bliss, what bliss? And Badaya said, yes. He said, what meaning do you have in mind that you repeatedly exclaim, what bliss, what bliss? And Badaya said, before, when I was a householder, so before he was a monk, maintaining the bliss of kingship. You see, Badaya was wealthy, he was a king. King in the sense of just being the ruler of sort of a small clan and a small area of territory in India. maintaining the bliss of kingship, I had guards posted within and without the royal apartments, within and without the city, within and without the countryside. But even though I was thus guarded, thus protected, I dwelled in fear, agitated, distrustful, and afraid. But now, on going alone to a forest, to the foot of a tree, or to an empty dwelling, I dwell without fear, unagitated, confident, and unafraid, unconcerned, unruffled, my wants satisfied, with my mind like a wild deer. This is the meaning I have in mind that I repeatedly exclaim, what bliss, what bliss. Then, on realizing the significance of that, the Buddha on that occasion exclaimed, in whom there exists no provocation, and for whom becoming and non-becoming are overcome, this person is one beyond fear, blissful without grief. So that story for me really hit home because I've shared, my history of being in the corporate world and really being focused on money and acquisition and all of those sorts of things. And this really spoke to me. I didn't have guards or anything like this, but sort of mentally I did. I was so worried about, well, now I have this position, I have this money, and I have all this stuff, and what happens if I lose the position? Then I'll lose the stuff. If I lose the money, then I won't have the status. And so it was like everything that came along with achieving what I wanted on that material level, it really ended up being something that tormented me. So it was like when I finally got out of the corporate world, started to let go of that stuff and unwind that part of my life, that it's like now, I sit here without much stuff. I sleep on an air mattress, and it's what bliss, what bliss, what bliss. There's nothing to be worried about losing, It's beautiful. So that's the teaching on renunciation. And before we conclude, I just had a couple of things I was going to mention. Parking. I'm not sure what parking looks like out there, but you are welcome to park anywhere you can fit out there, on the grass, in front of the garage. Little patches of grass, probably could fit a car between the garage and the alley. I've parked there. I have a smaller car, but it fits. So feel free to park anywhere in there. I'm not worried about the grass in any way. Just try and make parking convenient. And if it's still full, you can park on 5th Street, and you can also park on 6th Street. So that's that. The second thing was that Cheryl was kind enough to bring a bunch of baby jade plants, which need homes. And those are outside the entry door there, right below the outdoor bulletin board. So feel free to take a jade plant or more than one jade plant if you want them. I have one that she gave me about 3 years ago, and it has
Yeah,
about that
about
tall.
like that too.
Yeah. So jade plants are cool. So take a jade plant if you'd like a jade plant. Also, on the table out there are lots of these study guides, these handouts that I print up. And I've actually been just saving them and saving them and saving them, and never really had a venue for handing them out or passing them out. So they're on the table out there. If you want to go through those and take some, please feel free, because they're just extras from talks that we've had in the past. They are generally, if there's like a little wad like this, it's all the same talk. There's several copies of it. That's usually the way I put them together. So that's how you'll know. It's not, if it's a real fat one, it's not one booklet, it's several. But feel free to look through those, help yourself to any of those. And then I was going to mention too that I put a box out there. It is a dana box, which is Dana, I guess, again, is the word for giving and generosity. It's one of the perfections. But for those of you who want to pay community ed tuition, you can drop it in the Dana box. There's some envelopes out there that you can use if you're wanting to specify. If you're just wanting to donate to the center, you can do that in the Dana box. And for now, you can just make checks out to me for whatever it is, whether it's community ed or for donations here. And then I take care of things with the community ed folks. But that box is out there, so you can use that for tuitions or donations or whatever you would like to do. So before we go tonight, join me for one moment. Let go of all the things that we just talked about for a moment. Start to feel in your heart the feeling of compassion. And this is so important. This is, as you progress in your practice, as you go along in your practice, you'll really see how this makes such a difference. So, compassion for other beings. May all beings be free from suffering and from the causes of suffering. And may all beings be surrounded by love and kindness. May all beings be joyful and happy. May all beings be equanimous, which is peaceful and free and in a place where there's no wanting mind, there's no feeling that there's anything wrong with them. It's just freedom, peace, bliss. And may all of you sharing this space, and I'm so grateful that you're here, may all of you be truly, truly happy. Namaskar, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And remember, this is your meditation center, and you are the Sangha. Feel free to hang out. You can stay here and talk. And 1 week people were here till 10 o'clock. That was cool. You can sit outside. There's patio furniture. There's chairs out there. You know, you don't have to rush off. If you need to leave, leave. But I just want you to feel free and at home and just feel like you can hang out. And and if you know anybody who you think this might be helpful for, just bring them on next week or sometime soon. And
Yeah, I was supposed to tell you, Elaine had the last rock club tonight, so.
is that right?
Last one for the summer.
Wonderful. Well, it was great. One of our friends, one of our Sangha members, Elaine, she celebrated her 50th wedding anniversary on Saturday.
We just turned it back on.
Perfect timing. But yeah, so it was sweet. Elaine and Victor celebrated their 50th.
That was a nice celebration.
Yeah, I stopped by very briefly, gave her a hug, and talked to Victor a little bit, and I could see why they're still together after 50 years.
He's so mellow.
Yeah, really sweet couple, and she was wearing her wedding dress from
50 years
from
ago.
50 years ago, and yeah.
I would love to see that.
Yeah,
That's great.
they're pretty cool, and I think I can see how Elaine and Victor are sort of the yin and the yang. They just get the kind of the different energies, but
They do.
they're a neat couple. So it was just really neat to go and see that and see the other folks. It was pretty special. So she'll be back soon. Well, this is great. Wonderful seeing everybody.
Night.
Good night, Don.
See you later.
Take care.
Yep.
Thanks,
And,
Ken.
thank you